The morning sun rose over the golden wheat fields of New Demeter, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Marcus Chen stood on the porch of the colony administration building, coffee in hand, watching the farmers begin their daily work. Tractors rumbled to life in the distance, and the air smelled of fresh earth and growing things. It was peaceful. It had been peaceful for 3 years now. That peace ended at exactly 07:23 local time. The warning sirens blared across every settlement on the planet. Marcus dropped his coffee cup and ran inside to the command center. The screen showed what everyone feared most. 5 massive warships had appeared in orbit, their dark hulls blocking out the stars. The ships belonged to the Vaxir Dominion. "Get everyone to the town hall," Marcus ordered his assistant, Jenny Wu. "Emergency meeting. Now." Within an hour, the main hall in Harvest Town was packed with worried colonists. Farmers in dirt-covered overalls stood next to agricultural engineers in lab coats. Families held their children close. Everyone knew what Vaxir ships meant. The insectoid aliens had been sweeping through human frontier worlds for months, conquering colony after colony. A crackling voice came through the colony's main speakers. It spoke in heavily accented English translated by Vaxir computers. "Human settlement of New Demeter. This world now belongs to the Vaxir Dominion. You have 48 hours to surrender. Prepare to receive our ground forces. Resistance will result in orbital bombardment. You cannot win. You cannot escape. Accept your fate." The message repeated twice more, then fell silent. The hall erupted in frightened voices. Marcus raised his hands for quiet, but people kept shouting questions. "How many ships? Did we call for help? What about the children? Can we evacuate?" An older farmer named James Hitchens, who everyone called Hitch, stood up from his seat in the back. "Quiet down!" His voice boomed across the hall like thunder. The crowd fell silent. Hitch had that effect on people. He was tall and weathered, with gray hair and hands like old leather. "Let the man speak." Marcus nodded his thanks. "First, the facts. We have 5 Vaxir cruisers in orbit. Each carries about 1,000 ground troops. Our long-range communications are being jammed, so we can't call for help. Even if we could, the nearest Earth military base is 3 weeks away. We have no evacuation ships large enough to move 12,000 people." A woman near the front started crying. Others looked at the floor. This was a death sentence. "However," Marcus continued, his voice growing stronger, "we are not defenseless." Dr. Sarah Kowalski stood up from her seat. She was the head of the Agricultural Research Division, a short woman with brown hair always tied in a practical bun. "Many of you don't know the full story of this colony. Marcus, I think it's time we told them the truth." Marcus took a deep breath. New Demeter was never just a farming colony. Yes, we grow food. Yes, we export grain. But this settlement was established by Earth's Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA. This is a military research station. The room exploded with confusion. Marcus held up his hand again. Every person who was selected for the initial colonization had military backgrounds. Special forces, combat engineers, intelligence officers. We were all soldiers before we became farmers. We were sent here to develop something specific: weaponized agriculture. Ways to turn farming into warfare. Hitch stood again, a grim smile on his weathered face. "What Marcus is too polite to say is simple. We've spent 3 years turning this entire planet into one giant trap, and those bug-eyed bastards in orbit are about to walk right into it." Sarah stepped forward, pulling up holographic displays from her datapad. Images of strange-looking plants appeared in the air above the crowd. "For 3 years, my team has been genetically engineering our crops. These aren't normal plants. The wheat you see in the fields has razor-sharp edges coated in a compound that cuts through most known armor types. The corn produces airborne neurotoxins that affect insectoid nervous systems. Our root vegetables have been modified to act as underground sensors and explosive triggers." Marcus pulled up more images. "Our grain silos aren't grain silos. They're missile batteries. Our weather-controlled towers are electromagnetic pulse weapons. Our irrigation systems can be converted to fuel-air explosive delivery networks in under an hour. The tractors, combines, and crop dusters you all use every day, they're military vehicles with civilian shells." An elderly farmer named Robert stood up, his face red. "You mean we've been living on a military base this whole time? You lied to us? To our families?" "The original colonists knew," Marcus said quietly. "They volunteered. But yes, when we opened the colony to additional settlers 2 years ago, we kept the full truth classified. We needed the colony to look completely normal, to seem helpless, because the best defense is being underestimated. Hitch walked to the front of the room. I know you're scared. I know you're angry. But right now we have a choice. We can surrender and hope the Vaxir treat us with mercy, which their track record says they won't. Or we can fight, and I mean really fight, using everything we've built. We're farmers, someone shouted from the back. Not soldiers. I was a combat engineer for 12 years before I came here, Hitch replied. Sarah was a military biochemist. Marcus ran logistics for the Mars campaign. And yes, many of you are farmers. But you know what? Humans have been turning farming tools into weapons since we first planted seeds 10,000 years ago. Scythes, pitchforks, tractors, even the chemicals we use as fertilizer can be turned into explosives. It's what we do. Sarah activated another display. We have 48 hours. In that time, we need to activate all the defense systems, convert the farming equipment, and prepare the special crops. Everyone here will have a job. Some of you will fight. Some will operate systems. Some will protect the children in the underground shelters. But we all work together. Marcus looked across the faces in the crowd. Fear had turned to something else. Determination maybe, or anger. I won't lie to you. Some of us might die. But if we do this right, we can win. The Vaxir are expecting helpless farmers. They'll land their troops in our fields thinking they've already won. And that's when we show them what human farmers really are. An hour later, the colony transformed. Barn doors opened to reveal weapons caches. Underground bunkers that had been disguised as root cellars were stocked with ammunition and supplies. Families said quick goodbyes as adults moved to their assigned positions. In the research facility, Sarah and her team began activating the genetic triggers in their modified crops. Across the fields, plants that had looked normal began changing, growing faster, their structures hardening into something more dangerous. Hitch stood in the main garage, watching farmers he'd worked beside for years expertly converting their tractors into armored assault vehicles. They moved with military precision because they'd all done this before in training exercises. They just hadn't told the newer colonists. Marcus watched from the command center as defense systems came online one by one. Red dots became green on his tactical display. Missile silos armed, pulse weapons charged, underground explosive networks activated. In orbit, Commander Ziktar of the Vaxir Dominion looked at the scans of New Demeter one more time. The planet showed no military installations, no defense satellites, no shield generators. Just farms and small towns. An easy conquest. He ordered his ground forces to prepare for deployment. 5,000 warriors would land at dawn tomorrow. They would sweep across the farming settlements, crush any resistance, and claim this world for the Dominion. It would be over in hours. Ziktar looked at the peaceful fields below through his view screen. Somewhere down there, the humans were probably preparing to surrender. They always did once they realized they couldn't win. What the commander couldn't know was that those fields were waiting. The wheat swayed in the evening breeze, each stalk sharp as a blade. The corn grew tall and toxic. And beneath the soil, a network of sensors and explosives stretched for kilometers. The humans weren't preparing to surrender. They were preparing to reap. The Vaxir dropships descended through the atmosphere of New Demeter like falling stars. Inside the lead craft, Commander Ziktar watched his tactical display with satisfaction. His 5,000 warriors were landing in perfect formation across the main farming region. The humans had offered no resistance from orbit, fired no missiles, activated no shields. This would be even easier than predicted. All units begin ground sweep, he commanded in the clicking language of his people. Secure the primary settlement within 6 hours. Execute any humans who resist. Capture the rest for labor processing. The dropships touched down in the middle of the largest wheat field, their landing thrusters flattening the golden stalks in wide circles. Ramps lowered and Vaxir warriors poured out. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, their bodies covered in chitinous armor plates that were naturally part of their insectoid biology. They carried plasma rifles and moved in disciplined units. From his command ship in orbit, Ziktar reviewed the intelligence reports one more time. New Demeter was listed as a farming colony, established 8 years ago. Population 12,000. No military installations. Primary exports included wheat, corn, and genetically modified livestock. The file was marked as a low-threat target. The commander watched his ground forces spread across the field. Everything was proceeding perfectly. Perhaps too perfectly. A small doubt crept into his mind. He had studied human military history during his training. Humans were unpredictable. They had a saying, "Never underestimate your enemy." Perhaps he should have heeded that wisdom. On the ground, the Vaxier warriors advanced through the wheat field. Their boots crushed the stalks beneath them. The morning sun was bright, and there was no sign of the humans. No defensive positions, no weapons fire, nothing. "This is easy," one warrior clicked to his squad mate. "The humans have already fled." They didn't notice that the wheat stalks around them were different than normal wheat. They didn't see how the edges of each blade caught the sunlight like metal. They didn't realize they were walking through a field of organic razor wire. In the underground command center beneath Harvest Town, Marcus Chen watched the Vaxier positions on his tactical display. Hundreds of red dots spread across the fields. They were exactly where he wanted them. "All units ready?" he asked into his comm system. "Agricultural Division ready?" Sarah's voice came back. "Triggers armed." "Mechanized Division ready," Hitch reported. "Combines are in position." "Aerial Division ready," another voice confirmed. Crop dusters armed and fueled. Marcus took a deep breath. 3 years of preparation came down to this moment. "All units, activate on my mark." 3, 2, 1, mark. The wheat field exploded into motion. The stalks that the Vaxier warriors had been casually pushing aside suddenly whipped upward. The genetically modified wheat, responding to electronic triggers buried in the soil, hardened its structure. Each blade became sharp as a knife. The stalks weren't just plants anymore. They were weapons. The Vaxier warriors screamed in their clicking language as the wheat sliced through the gaps in their armor. The organic razors found the joints, the soft spots, the vulnerable areas. Warriors fell, green blood mixing with the golden stalks. Those who tried to run found only more of the weaponized wheat. Section 7 reports 30% casualties, a Vaxier officer reported to Zektar. His voice panicked. "The plants are attacking us." "The plants are attacking." "Impossible," Zektar clicked. But his screen showed the truth. His warriors were dying in a wheat field. "Pull back to the landing zones. Regroup at the dropships," but it was too late for many of them. As the Vaxier retreated, the cornfields activated next. The tall stalks began releasing clouds of yellowish pollen into the air. This wasn't normal pollen. Sarah's team had engineered it specifically to target insectoid nervous systems. The Vaxier warriors who breathed it in began twitching, their movements becoming uncoordinated. Some collapsed. Others fired their weapons randomly, hitting their own squad mates. Then the ground itself turned against them. The root systems beneath the soil, grown in specific patterns over 3 years, had been threaded with explosive charges. Hitch had designed the system himself. When the sensors detected Vaxier weight patterns, the explosives triggered in sequence. The earth erupted in dozens of places at once. Warriors were thrown into the air. Entire squads disappeared in clouds of dirt and debris. "We need air support." A Vaxier ground commander screamed into his comm. "Orbital bombardment." Now Zektar hesitated. Orbital bombardment would kill the humans, but it would also destroy the valuable farmland. The Dominion wanted this planet for food production, but his warriors were dying. He made his decision. "All ships prepare to fire on coordinates." His order was cut off by a proximity alarm. Something was launching from the surface. Many somethings. Across New Demeter, hundreds of structures that looked like grain silos opened their tops. But they weren't storing grain. Inside each silo was a surface-to-air missile battery. The missiles screamed upward, their targeting systems locked onto the Vaxier cruisers. "Evasive maneuvers," Zektar shouted. His ships tried to move, but they had been in stationary orbit, confident of their safety. The missiles struck home. Explosions rippled across the hull of the cruiser to his left. Another ship reported critical damage to its engine systems. How? Zektar clicked in disbelief. The scans showed no military installations. His intelligence officer brought up the surface scans again, running them through new filters. "Commander, the structures were disguised. The missile silos were built to look exactly like agricultural storage. The targeting computers were hidden inside weather monitoring equipment. The power generators were camouflaged as irrigation pump stations. On the ground, the Vaxier warriors who had survived the wheat and the explosions finally made it back to their dropships. They thought they were safe. They were wrong. From behind the hills came a sound like thunder. The farmers of New Demeter had converted their combines, massive harvesting machines, into assault vehicles. Thick armor plating covered their bodies. Mounted on top were weapons that Hitch's team had been assembling in secret for years. Railguns, plasma cannons, heavy machine guns. The combines charged into the Vaxier positions at full speed. They were built to harvest tons of wheat per hour. Now they harvested enemy warriors instead. The blades that normally cut crops cut through Vaxier armor. The conveyor systems that normally moved grain threw broken warriors aside like chaff. Hitch rode in the lead combine, manning the railgun personally. He had been a combat engineer in the Earth military for 12 years. He knew how to kill. He just happened to also know how to farm. Today he was doing both. "This is for thinking we were just farmers," he shouted as he fired. The railgun round punched through a dropship's hull, causing it to explode. Above the battlefield, the crop dusters appeared. These small aircraft normally used to spray fertilizer over fields had been modified. Their crop spraying systems now delivered something very different. Incendiary compounds rained down on Vaxier positions. Smoke grenades created confusion. Some dusters dropped cluster munitions that Hitch's team had manufactured from mining explosives. In the underground command center, Sarah watched her biological weapons perform exactly as designed. The neurotoxin pollen had affected 70% of the Vaxier forces in the cornfields. The razor wheat had caused massive casualties in the initial stages. Now she activated her final surprise. Across the farmland, innocent-looking scarecrows came to life. They weren't scarecrows at all. They were automated combat drones disguised in waiting. They stood up from their posts and began firing at Vaxier warriors. Some carried traditional firearms. Others used electromagnetic pulse weapons that disrupted Vaxier communications and targeting systems. A Vaxier squad took cover behind a wooden fence, trying to regroup. The fence exploded. Even the farming infrastructure had been weaponized. The wooden posts were hollow and filled with reactive compounds. Commander Ziktar watched his casualty reports climb. He had landed with 5,000 warriors. Less than half were still combat effective. His fleet had taken serious damage. 2 cruisers were crippled and falling out of orbit. The others were burning fuel, trying to avoid the constant missile launches from the surface. This was supposed to be a farming colony. He clicked weakly. His intelligence officer pulled up. Earth's historical database. "Commander, I found something. Human agricultural development and human weapons development evolved together throughout their history. They used the same tools for both. The same chemicals. The same machines. They domesticated animals both for food and for war. They turned peaceful plants into weapons through selective breeding. For humans, farming and fighting are not separate activities. They are 2 sides of the same activity." Ziktar looked at the information in horror. Every human farming colony in the galaxy could potentially be like this. Hidden fortresses disguised as peaceful settlements. Warriors pretending to be farmers. Weapons masquerading as tractors. "Recall all ground forces," he ordered. "Emergency evacuation. We're leaving." The retreat was chaos. Vaxier dropships that could still fly launched from the surface, packed with wounded warriors. They left behind hundreds of dead. The humans didn't stop firing until the last ship had left the atmosphere. The smoke was still rising from the wheat fields when Marcus Chen emerged from the underground command center. The morning sun was higher now, but the light seemed different. Filtered through the haze of battle, everything looked gray and tired. Bodies of Vaxier warriors lay scattered across the landscape like broken dolls. The once golden wheat was trampled and stained with green blood. "Casualty report," Marcus said quietly to Jenny Wu, who was following him with a datapad. 23 injured. 2 dead, she replied, her voice tight. Both were in the northern sector when a dropship crashed. They didn't make it to the shelters in time. Marcus closed his eyes. 2 families would be getting terrible news today. 2 people who had trusted him. The victory felt hollow for a moment. Hitch climbed down from his combine, his face covered in soot and dirt. He looked exhausted but alive. "We did it," he said, clapping Marcus on the shoulder. "Those bugs won't forget New Demeter anytime soon." "No," Marcus agreed. "But they'll be back. Maybe not the Vaxier, but someone. This victory just painted a target on our backs." Sarah approached from the research facility, already back to work despite the battle having ended less than an hour ago. "I need to collect samples from the fallen Vaxier. Their biology is different than our intelligence predicted. If we understand it better, we can design even more effective countermeasures." Marcus nodded. This was who they were now. Not just farmers defending their homes, but soldiers studying their enemies. The line between the two had blurred completely. Over the next few days, the colony worked to recover. The dead were buried with honors. The wounded were treated in the medical facility, which had been disguised as a veterinary clinic. The Vexir bodies were studied, catalogued, and then buried far from the human settlements. Even enemies deserve that much respect. But the real work was happening in the communication center. Marcus sat at the console, preparing his report to Earth Command. The Vaxir jamming was gone now, and the long-range transmitters were finally operational. What he was about to send would change everything. Command, this is Administrator Marcus Chen of New Demeter Colony. I am reporting a successful defense against Vaxir Dominion forces. Hostile fleet consisted of 5 cruisers and approximately 5,000 ground troops. Enemy casualties, estimated 3,800 dead or wounded. Enemy fleet damage, 2 cruisers destroyed, 3 damaged. Colonial casualties, 2 dead, 23 wounded. All defensive systems performed within expected parameters. Request further instructions. He attached the full combat logs, tactical recordings, and Sarah's biological data. Then he sent it. The message would take 3 days to reach Earth Command, and another 3 days to get a response. A week of waiting. What Marcus didn't know was that the message wouldn't just reach Earth Command. In the vast network of space communications, information spreads like wildfire. Within hours, the report had been intercepted, copied, and transmitted across a dozen different channels. By the end of the first day, every human colony in the frontier had heard about New Demeter. By the end of the second day, so had the aliens. On the Vaxir homeworld of Zixthar, Commander Ziktar stood before the Dominion Council. The ruling caste of the Vaxir Empire sat in a semicircle, their antennae twitching with anger and confusion. Ziktar had failed, and failure was not tolerated. You lost more than half your warriors to farmers, the High Counselor clicked. How is this possible? Ziktar kept his head lowered in submission. The humans deceived us. The colony was not what it appeared to be. Every element of their agricultural infrastructure was designed for warfare. The entire planet was a military installation disguised as a farming settlement. And you did not detect this? Another council member demanded. There was nothing to detect, Ziktar replied. The weapons were inside agricultural equipment. The missiles were in grain silos. The soldiers wore farmers' clothing. They used the plants themselves as weapons. Our intelligence had no framework for understanding this kind of deception. The High Counselor's antennae twitched rapidly, a sign of deep thought. What are the implications? Are all human colonies like this? Unknown, Ziktar admitted. But we must assume the possibility. The humans have a saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. They may have turned every farming colony into a fortress, every mining operation into a weapons facility. We cannot know until we attack, and by then it may be too late. The council fell silent. The Vaxir Dominion had been expanding steadily for decades, conquering weaker species and claiming their worlds. But humans were different. Humans lied with their entire civilization. They made weapons look like tools and warriors look like farmers. Issue a directive to all fleets, the High Counselor finally ordered. No human colonies are to be attacked without extensive reconnaissance. Deploy spies. Gather intelligence. We must understand what we are facing before we proceed. The same conversation was happening on a dozen other worlds. The peaceful Quailith, a species of blue-skinned humanoids, held an emergency session of their parliament. The warrior race of the Kragnor reviewed their invasion plans of human space and put them on hold. Even the ancient and powerful Zephyr Collective, beings of pure energy, took notice. In the Galactic Council Chamber, a massive space station that orbited the neutral world of Concordia, representatives from 50 species gathered for an emergency session. The holographic display in the center showed tactical footage from the Battle of New Demeter. Alien diplomats watched in silence as human farmers destroyed a Vaxir fleet. The ambassador from the Quailith species, an elderly diplomat named Kelthar, spoke first. His voice was soft but carried across the chamber. We must discuss the human question. This event changes our understanding of their capabilities. The humans broke no laws, another ambassador pointed out. They have the right to defend their colonies. But the level of deception concerns us, a third voice added. They have turned peaceful settlements into weapons. How can we trust any human colony now? The human ambassador, a stern woman named Patricia Morrison, stood up. She had been Earth's representative to the Galactic Council for 5 years. We have always been clear about our defensive posture. Every human colony has the right to self-defense. If that defense involves creative use of resources, that is our choice. Creative? The Vaxir ambassador clicked angrily. You turned plants into weapons. You disguised missile silos as grain storage. This is deception on a planetary scale. Patricia smiled coldly. Perhaps you should have considered that before you attacked a civilian colony. Or did you forget that New Demeter sent no threatening messages, made no aggressive moves? You attacked a farming settlement without provocation. What did you expect? The Vaxir ambassador had no response to that. The law was clear. The Vaxir had initiated hostilities against a peaceful colony. The fact that the colony was prepared to fight back was not illegal. Kelthar of the Quelith raised his hand for attention. I have studied human history extensively. This event is not surprising if you understand where humans come from. Let me explain something to this council. He activated his own holographic display. Images appeared showing Earth's ancient history. Humans with simple tools. Humans planting crops. Humans building cities. Humans are unique among spacefaring species, Kelthar continued. Most races developed either as prey or predators. We Quelith were prey animals. We developed society as protection. The Vaxir were predators. They developed society for better hunting. But humans were both. They were prey that became predators. They were hunted, so they learned to hunt. More images appeared. Humans with spears hunting mammoths. Humans building fortified villages. Humans riding horses into battle. But here's the key difference, Kelthar said. When humans developed agriculture 10,000 years ago, they did not stop being warriors. They became warrior farmers. The same person who planted wheat in the morning would defend it with a spear in the evening. Their agricultural tools became weapons. Their draft animals became war mounts. Their food preservation techniques became chemical warfare. The assembled ambassadors watched in fascination as the presentation continued. Pitchforks used as weapons in peasant revolts. Tractors converted to tanks in ancient wars. Fertilizer turned into explosives. Crop dusters used for military purposes. It was all there in human history, repeated across centuries on Earth. Humans do not separate farming from fighting, Kelthar concluded. To them, both are about survival. Both are about controlling their environment. When you attack a human farming colony, you are not attacking helpless farmers. You are attacking humans who farm. And humans who farm are still humans. They will use every resource available to survive. This is not deception. This is simply who they are. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. There were thousands of human colonies spread across the galaxy. Mining operations, farming settlements, research stations, trading posts. How many of them were like New Demeter? How many were hidden fortresses waiting to be triggered? The Vaxir ambassador spoke again, his clicking voice subdued. We are withdrawing our complaint against humanity. The attack on New Demeter was ill-advised. We will not be targeting human agricultural colonies in the future. Patricia Morrison nodded in acknowledgement, but said nothing. She didn't need to. The message was clear. 3 months after the Battle of New Demeter, the colony was transformed. The population had nearly doubled. New arrivals came on military transports disguised as supply ships. They were farmers officially, but they were also combat veterans, military engineers, intelligence specialists, and weapons experts. They came to learn and to teach. Marcus Chen stood at the new training facility, watching a group of colonists from a settlement called New Harvest practice, converting their tractors into combat vehicles. They worked slowly at first, unsure of the modifications, but Hitch was patient, showing them which armor plates went where, how to mount the weapon systems, how to test the targeting computers. You need to do this fast, Hitch explained to a young farmer named David. When enemies come, you won't have days to prepare. You'll have hours, maybe less. This needs to be second nature. You should be able to convert your tractor in the dark, half asleep in the middle of a storm. Practice until you can do it without thinking. David nodded, his hands working faster. He was from a real farming family. No military background at all. But he was learning. They all were. In the research facility, Sarah Kowalski was teaching a workshop on defensive botany to agricultural scientists from 6 different colonies. She stood in front of a holographic display showing the molecular structure of her weaponized wheat. The key is subtlety, she explained. You can't just create obviously dangerous plants. They need to look normal, grow normal, and pass standard agricultural inspections. The modifications are dormant until you activate them with specific frequencies. See here? She highlighted a section of the plant's DNA. This sequence responds to radio signals in the 2.4 gigahertz range. Until it receives that signal, the plant is just wheat. After the signal, the cellular structure changes within minutes. A scientist from a colony called Terra Verde raised her hand. What about long-term effects? Do these modifications affect the soil or contaminate future crops? Good question, Sarah replied. The modifications are designed to break down completely within 72 hours of activation. After 3 days, the plants return to normal composition. You can safely plant regular crops afterward. We've tested this extensively. Across the colony, similar training sessions were happening: combat tactics, underground shelter construction, communications warfare, medical treatment for alien biology. Every aspect of New Demeter's defense was being documented, studied, and taught, but not everyone was happy with the changes. In the original town hall, where the emergency meeting had happened 3 months ago, a different kind of meeting was taking place. About 50 colonists sat in the audience, many of them newer arrivals who had come to New Demeter expecting a peaceful farming life. They had not expected to live on a military base. A woman named Lisa Tran stood at the front, her voice angry. "We came here to escape war. Earth is crowded and militarized. The colonies were supposed to be different. They were supposed to be peaceful. But now we're training other colonies to fight. We're building weapons? This isn't what we signed up for." Marcus sat in the front row, listening. He had expected this. Not everyone could accept the reality of frontier life. Some people wanted peace so badly they would ignore danger until it killed them. "I understand your frustration," Marcus said calmly, "but the choice isn't between peace and war. The choice is between being prepared or being helpless. The Vaxir didn't attack us because we had weapons. They attacked us because they thought we were weak. If we had been unarmed, we would all be dead or enslaved right now. But now we've made ourselves targets," another colonist shouted. "Every alien species knows about us. They know we're dangerous. Won't that make them more likely to attack?" "Maybe," Marcus admitted. "Or maybe it will make them think twice. Fear can prevent war just as well as friendliness. Probably better, actually. The galaxy is not a peaceful place. It's full of species that respect strength and prey on weakness. I wish it were different. But wishing doesn't change reality." An older man named Robert, who had been skeptical from the beginning, stood up. "I've lived here since the colony was founded. 8 years. And I'll tell you something. Marcus is right. We've had 3 incidents before the Vaxir attack that most of you don't know about. 2 years ago, a Kragnor scout ship surveyed us for a week, then left without making contact. We think they decided we weren't worth attacking. Last year, pirates from the Outer Rim tried to raid our livestock. They left when they realized we were too well defended. 6 months ago, a Vaxir probe mapped our defenses, and then they came in force." He paused, letting that sink in. "The galaxy has been testing us for years, probing, looking for weakness. The Vaxir attack wasn't random. They chose us because their intelligence said we were easy. They were wrong, and now other species know they were wrong. That doesn't make us targets. We were already targets. It just makes us targets that can fight back." Lisa Tran sat down slowly. Her anger hadn't disappeared, but she looked thoughtful now. Marcus decided to press the point. "Anyone who wants to leave can leave," he said clearly. "I'm not forcing anyone to stay. We can arrange transport to other human colonies, even back to Earth if you want. But understand this. The colonies that don't prepare are the ones that will fall. New Harvest asked for our help because their neighbors were attacked last month. The colony of Pleasant Valley was wiped out. 5,000 people dead because they had no defenses. They believed that being peaceful would protect them. It didn't." The room fell silent. Everyone had heard about Pleasant Valley. The reports had been horrific. "So you can leave," Marcus continued. "Find a colony that refuses to prepare. Hope that your neighbor's suffering will satisfy the predators. Or you can stay here, learn to defend yourself and your family, and maybe survive when the next threat comes. Because there will be a next threat. That's not pessimism. That's reality." Over the next few weeks, 15 families left New Demeter. Marcus arranged their transport without complaint. But for every family that left, 5 more arrived. Word was spreading through human space. New Demeter wasn't just a farming colony anymore. It was a symbol, a promise. a place where humans could live in peace but were ready for war. 6 months after the Vaxir attack, a ship arrived that caught everyone's attention. It wasn't human. The vessel was small and elegant, with smooth lines and an unusual propulsion system. It broadcast a standard diplomatic code and requested permission to land. Marcus met the visitor at the landing pad. The alien that emerged was Quailith, one of the peaceful species that dominated the galactic trade networks. This particular Quailith was elderly, his blue skin faded to a light lavender. He wore simple robes and carried no visible weapons. "I'm Ambassador Kelthar," the alien said in perfect English. "I hope I'm welcome here." "You are," Marcus replied cautiously. "What brings a Galactic Council ambassador to our small farming colony?" Kelthar smiled, an expression that looked strange on his alien features. "I wanted to see it for myself. The colony that defeated a Vaxir fleet, the farmers who became warriors. May I look around?" Marcus showed him the colony, the fields where the battle had happened, now replanted and growing new crops, the research facility where Sarah's team developed their defensive botany, the training center where farmers from other colonies learned to fight. Kelthar observed everything with interest, asking questions and taking notes on a small device. Finally, they stood on a hill overlooking the main settlement. The sun was setting, painting the wheat fields golden red. It was beautiful, peaceful. Nothing in the view suggested the violence that had happened here. "You know," Kelthar said quietly, "my people have been watching humans for 50 years. Since you first developed faster-than-light travel, we have been trying to understand you. You are so different from other species. How so?" Marcus asked. "Most species develop along a single path. We Quailith were prey animals on our homeworld. We learned cooperation and technology to survive against predators. When we reached space, we brought that philosophy with us. We avoid conflict, prefer trade and diplomacy, and rely on others for protection. The Vaxir were predators. They learned hunting and hierarchy. When they reached space, they became conquerors. Each species has its nature shaped by millions of years of evolution." Kelthar turned to face Marcus directly. "But humans are different. You were both predator and prey. You competed with animals stronger than you, so you became smarter and more adaptable. You fought each other, so you learned both cooperation and warfare. You faced scarcity, so you invented agriculture. But you also faced abundance, so you invented art and philosophy. You contain contradictions. You are warriors and farmers, scientists and poets, builders and destroyers, all at the same time. Is that good or bad?" Marcus asked. "Neither. Both. It depends on circumstances." Kelthar gestured toward the settlement. "This colony embodies that duality. You grow food and you grow weapons. You welcome visitors and you prepare for invaders. You are farmers who are also soldiers. Not farmers or soldiers. Farmers and soldiers. The distinction doesn't exist for you." Marcus considered that. "I suppose you're right. Hitch says the best warriors are people defending their homes, because they have something real to fight for." 2 years after the Battle of New Demeter, the galaxy had changed. It was a subtle change, one that most civilians didn't notice, but military planners and intelligence agencies across a dozen species saw it clearly. The human frontier had become dangerous to attack. Commander Ziktar, now demoted to a teaching position at the Vaxir Military Academy, stood before a classroom of young warriors. On the screen behind him was a tactical map of human space. Red markers indicated human colonies. There were hundreds of them. "Your assignment," Ziktar clicked to his students, "is to identify which of these colonies are military installations and which are civilian targets." The students studied the map carefully. They analyzed the data: populations, exports, infrastructure reports, orbital traffic. After an hour, they submitted their answers. Ziktar displayed the results. "You are all wrong," he said flatly. "Every single one of you failed this test." The students clicked in confusion. One brave warrior raised a foreclaw. "But Commander, we used standard intelligence analysis. We identified patterns of military activity, hidden weapons, defensive preparations." "And you found nothing," Ziktar interrupted, "because there is nothing to find. Or rather, everything is hidden so perfectly that you cannot distinguish it from normal civilian activity. This is the human problem. Every colony could be a fortress. Every farmer could be a soldier. Every tractor could be a tank. You cannot know until you attack, and by then it is too late." He pulled up footage from the Battle of New Demeter. The students had seen it before, but Ziktar made them watch again. The wheat fields that killed. The combines that charged like cavalry. The silos that launched missiles. The farmers who fought like special forces. 2 years ago, we thought we understood humans, Ziktar continued. We were wrong. The Dominion has since attempted to colonize 3 other worlds in human territory. All 3 attempts failed. Not because humans sent fleets to stop us. Not because they had military bases nearby. But because the colonists themselves fought back. A mining colony used their excavation equipment as artillery. A research station turned their laboratory into a chemical weapons facility. A trading post converted their cargo haulers into bombers. He paused, letting the information settle. Humans do not separate civilian and military. They are all warriors all the time. They simply choose when to reveal that nature. This makes them unpredictable and extremely dangerous. The Dominion has officially declared human space off limits for expansion. We will not attack them again unless absolutely necessary. Similar lessons were being taught across the galaxy. The Kragnor warrior guild studied human tactics. The pirate cartels avoided human trade routes. Even the powerful Zephyr Collective, beings of energy who rarely concerned themselves with physical species, took note of humanity's defensive capabilities. On New Demeter, Marcus Chen was in his office when the communication came through. It was from Earth Command, marked urgent and encrypted. He opened it and read carefully. Then he read it again, making sure he understood correctly. The message was an offer. Earth wanted to officially establish the Frontier Defense Network, with New Demeter as its headquarters. Marcus would be promoted to general and given command of defensive operations across 50 human colonies. Resources, personnel, and funding would be provided. It was everything he had been building toward. But there was a catch. Accepting would mean transforming New Demeter permanently. It would become a military installation in truth, not just in capability. The farming would continue, but it would be secondary. The colony would be a fortress first, a farm second. Marcus walked out to the fields where Hitch was working. The old farmer was teaching a group of colonists from a settlement called New Beijing how to maintain their weaponized crops. He looked up when Marcus approached and immediately noticed his expression. Bad news? Hitch asked. Maybe good. I'm not sure. Marcus explained the offer. Hitch listened without interrupting, his weathered hands still working the soil. When Marcus finished, Hitch was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "What do you want to do?" "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "This place started as a research station pretending to be a farm. Then it became a real farm that could also fight. Now Earth wants it to be a military base that also grows food. It feels like we're losing something important." Hitch stood up, brushing dirt from his hands. "Let me tell you something about farming. You know what the most important lesson is? You reap what you sow. We planted seeds of peace here. Wheat and corn and good intentions. But we also planted seeds of war. Weapons and soldiers and defensive systems. Both things grew because we gave them both water and sunlight. Now we're harvesting what we planted. So you think I should accept?" "I think you should ask the people who live here," Hitch replied. "This is their home too. Let them decide what it becomes." That evening, Marcus called another town hall meeting. The building was packed, just like it had been 2 years ago when the Vaxir arrived. But the people were different now. More confident, more capable. They had defended their home once. They knew they could do it again. Marcus explained Earth's offer clearly and honestly. He told them what it would mean. More military personnel, larger training facilities, regular fleet visits. New Demeter would become the shield of the frontier, protecting dozens of other colonies. But it would also mean giving up some of their agricultural identity. The debate lasted 3 hours. Some colonists were excited about the opportunity. Others worried about losing the peaceful farming life they had built. Parents concerned about raising children on a military base argued with veterans who believed defense was essential. It was messy and loud and very democratic. Finally, Sarah Kowalski stood up. She rarely spoke at these meetings, preferring to let others debate while she worked in her lab. But when she spoke, people listened. "I came here to study plants," she said quietly. "I wanted to develop new crops, improve yields, and help feed humanity as we spread across the stars. That was my dream, and I have done that. Our grain feeds 1 million people across 6 colonies. Our livestock genetics have improved food production by 30%. Our research has advanced agricultural science significantly." She paused, looking around the room. "But I also designed weapons, plants that kill, toxins that target specific species. Biological defenses that have saved lives. I did not want to be a weapons designer. But I am, and I am good at it, because sometimes growing food isn't enough. Sometimes you have to protect your ability to grow food. Sarah took a breath. I vote we accept Earth's offer, not because I want us to be soldiers, but because the galaxy needs someone to stand guard. If not us, then who? We have the knowledge, the skills, and the experience. We can save other colonies from what happened to Pleasant Valley. We can teach farmers to defend themselves. We can be the shield, and we can still be farmers. Both things. Always both things. The vote was close, but it passed. New Demeter would become the headquarters of the Frontier Defense Network. The transformation would take a year, but it would happen. Marcus sent his acceptance to Earth Command that night. Then he walked out to the fields one last time before everything changed. Hitch was there, sitting on his tractor and looking at the stars. Couldn't sleep either, Marcus asked. Too much thinking, Hitch replied. I've been working this land for 8 years now. Feels strange to know it's going to be different. Different, not gone, Marcus said. We'll still grow wheat. We'll still plant crops every spring and harvest every fall. That doesn't change. But we'll also train soldiers, build weapons, plan for wars. Yes, Hitch nodded slowly. You know what's funny? Back on Earth before I came here, I was tired of fighting. I had spent 12 years in combat zones. I wanted peace. I wanted to just grow things and watch them thrive. And I got that for a while. This place was peaceful, was. Do you regret it? Marcus asked. Coming here? Staying? No, Hitch said immediately. Because I learned something important. Peace isn't the absence of violence. Peace is the ability to defend against violence. Real peace requires strength. Sheep can't have peace no matter how much they want it because wolves exist. But sheepdogs, they can have peace because they're strong enough to keep the wolves away. He gestured toward the dark fields. That's what we are now. Sheepdogs. We grow food and we guard the flock. Both jobs are important. Both jobs are necessary. And I'm okay with that. The transformation of New Demeter took exactly 1 year. New facilities were built. Expanded training centers, larger communication arrays, proper military barracks. The population grew to 30,000, with roughly equal numbers of farmers and military personnel. But the distinction between the two groups blurred quickly. Soldiers learned to farm. Farmers learned military tactics. Children grew up knowing both skills were normal and necessary. Other colonies sent delegations to learn. The lessons of New Demeter spread across the frontier. Not every colony became a fortress, but every colony became prepared. Tractors everywhere could be converted to combat vehicles. Silos everywhere could launch defensive missiles. Farmers everywhere knew how to fight. The Frontier Defense Network grew to encompass 73 colonies. They shared intelligence, coordinated defenses, and supported each other when threats appeared.